So hello everyone, and welcome to another talk from XFW 21, Amsterdam Fintech Week, coming live to you with all our speakers, partners, sponsors, and friends. And we're very happy that we can speak today with Lucia Hegenbartova from Dreams. Hi, Lucia.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you here, and it's really nice that it's quite easy to discuss with you, even though you're in Berlin and I'm in Amsterdam. But I'm really happy that we've been able to have this conversation and dive in a little bit deeper into what Dreams does and what you thought about Amsterdam Fintech Week. But we'll get back to that a little bit later. Yeah, I think it was also nice that actually this year, since we did a full digital event week, we were able to connect across Europe. So from that perspective, it was also easy for you to join in also from remotely. What do you think about that? Actually, was it easy to do, or did you also feel there was something missing, perhaps?
No, I was really impressed. I mean, like obviously, since the beginning of the pandemic and when all of the events shifted online, we have been participating in a lot of digital events with, I would say, like various success. And at the Amsterdam Fintech Week, as I said, like I was really impressed. Like everything was very smooth, very professional. We got into conversations with people. So for us, like it was even a more effective way to some degree. Than doing it live. Obviously, we are still looking forward to hopefully do it live next year. But given the circumstances, we were very, very happy. So great event.
We're also really looking forward to having everyone in a room again and being able to especially also have some fun afterwards after all the serious stuff, because of course I think that's what we kind of miss, right? So the informal after talk and the small encounters that you have generally around events that are just a bit more hard to arrange online. So I'm definitely also looking forward to the next edition. But maybe let's first dive into what Dreams is doing a little bit more. And really, I know that you do some great stuff for banks. Can you tell us a little bit about what you focus on and how you do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, in a nutshell, we offer a customer experience layer that enables banks to boost their customers' engagement in financial products and at the same time to increase their financial well-being. So we basically take the bank's existing financial products and we frame them in a way that takes into account how the human mind works and the role, especially that emotion plays in our decision-making as humans. And that basically allows us to effectively help people to develop healthier financial habits, which is crucial to eliminate the barriers to engagement that are often rooted in anxiety and lack of confidence. So that's what we're focusing on. And when it comes to the functionality, our product suite includes different modules that you can use individually or in combination, including a savings booster, a debt management module, and an investment product. And as a bank, you can really easily embed these seamlessly into your existing application.
Okay. Well, it sounds really cool. And I think that the subject of financial well-being was high on our agenda during Amsterdam Fintech Week, with also Her Majesty Queen Maxima making the point of you see also her attention shifting from financial inclusion to financial literacy to financial well-being now as a more of a generic topic of helping people to be comfortable with their financial situation and financial means. And I think it's a very important topic, especially also for the tech industry to be fully aware of. Where do we stand? Do you think with regard to that? Because to me it feels also that we're learning a lot about how we as people interact with financial products, especially also since these products are evolving so fast at the moment.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, what we are really happy to see is that the topic of financial well-being, financial wellness, financial health, no matter how you frame it, really seems to pick up speed, especially in the last couple of years. Dreams has been, I would say, one of the first companies probably worldwide starting to address the topic back in 2015, where it was like not a thing. Like nobody knew what financial, like nobody was talking about it. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody thought it was exciting or sexy as a company. So we were kind of the pioneers there, but I'm really, really happy to see that it's picking up speed. And I would say from my perspective, because we're obviously talking to a lot of banks day to day, and And we have noticed, especially in the last year, and I think that it correlates with the corona pandemic as well, that is just like interest in financial well-being from the side of the banks has been growing exponentially. And I think that's a great thing for the whole industry, for the consumers. Obviously, for us, it means more competition, but I think in a good way.
Yeah.
So we're super happy to see that development.
And so I think you really basically base all the work on behavior, let's say on behavioral science, right? To actually understand how people feel and behave around financial choices that they have to make. How's that evolving? How do you keep up with everything that we basically have to learn with all the new apps and new methods that are sort of coming forward, and therefore new choices that people have to make?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you could say that the cognitive and behavioral science expertise is really embedded in our DNA as a company. It's for us, it's not just an add-on. It's really the foundation of everything that we do. And the reason for that was initially the observation that most of the financial institutions currently really miss the mark when it comes to understanding the customer, understanding how they see the world, understanding how they make decisions, and how you can effectively support them, which then translates into very poor, sterile customer experience that is not effective. So our decision from day one was to develop an in-house science team. So we have basically hired some of the leading researchers in the space. Our chief scientific officer has been researching reasons why people procrastinate, for example, before, which is quite closely related to the reason why people struggle with saving. So we have prioritized having that scientific expertise in-house. And with that team, we also have the capability to collaborate with researchers worldwide. So for example, we work with scientists from Harvard, UCLA, the University of Toronto, the London School of Economics. And that allows us to really have access to the latest insights from the academic world. And they are also using our platform as a test bed for their studies. So basically, we provide them the environment to run their research on, and in exchange, we get access to the latest insights, basically years ahead of them being published. So it's kind of like, I would say, dual strategy to have the competence in-house, but then also to rely on a very widespread global network of researchers that we collaborate with.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think there's so much to learn, because I also see, for example, policymakers struggle with this subject, right? So I think also with the rise of AI, you see a lot of debate coming up, as in, we can do a lot with personal data, but how far should we go, and in how far, where's the border between a nudge in the right way and a nudge in the wrong way to that from that end. There's a lot of discussions I think we still need to have to sort of also figure out how do you deal with that? How do you point your ethical compass, so to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like the ethical aspect is a critical one. It's also an ongoing discussion that we are having internally, because obviously, like if you use the kind of like tools that behavioral science, cognitive science is offering you, like sometimes there is a fine line between helping the customer and going too far. And I think like it's extremely important that if you, for example, nudge, or whatever technique you're using, that you nudge for good, that you're doing things that are in the best interest of the customer. And we know that that's not always the case. So you can look at some of the trading apps like Robinhood, who are heavily leaning into those scientific tools, and it's not necessarily good for the user. Like obviously it increases engagement, but at what cost for the user? So that's also something that differentiates Dreams from other companies in the space who are relying on science, is that we only frame it in an ethical way. We never do anything that is not in the best interests of the customer. And I think like it's a fine balance. You obviously need to balance the user's best interests with the bank's best interests, but there's definitely an overlap. And that's the area where
sweet spot. Yeah,
absolutely,
exactly. Yeah, because that was also one of my questions. Is that so? Generally, you see that there's an increasing interest from banks to work with you, right, and to dive into behavioral science and sort of help the customer make the right decisions. But I'm also curious to sort of what's driving that, right? So do you see that that's actually a more social conscious with the banks that are more aware of the role that they need to play? Or is it actually also commercially appealing to actually embed this? Do you see that that's, creates positive word of mouth, or in another way is appealing from a commercial perspective?
I would say it's both, and obviously, like for every bank is slightly different. But from the banks that we've been talking to, we see that some of them are really driven by, to me, like surprisingly idealistic motivation. Where like there are banks who actually care about their customers' financial well-being, and they're looking for the best method, even at the cost of sacrificing some of their profits. I would say that that's probably still the minority. Most of the banks, my personal perception, that are getting interested in the topic are doing it because they understand that it's what they need to do to especially engage the millennial customers, to retain the millennial customers. But to be quite honest, I think there's nothing wrong with that either. It's like, I'm like, you can do good and do well. I think that's the sweet spot. Obviously, a business is still a business. But I'm really happy to see the development that they are looking for ways to combine the bank's best interest with the best interest for the customer.
Yeah, no, I fully agree there. I think it's if you don't take care well enough of yourself, it's pretty hard to help others in the end. So you need to indeed sustain your organization and your business to be able to keep on doing also good things if you want. So I think it's really cool. So I'm really looking forward to see much more of these solutions in everyday financial solutions, where you basically really feel helped in the way that I think there's already so much nudging going on around us. But I think in the financial industry we're still relatively early on to discover how we actually help people make the right decisions, and definitely indeed also some ethical debates to have. So what are you particularly looking forward to in this field, right? So what do you expect? What will be the next things that we're looking at? Is it do you see that that's more in the direction of, let's say, poverty relief, or is it more really into helping people with investment decisions? Or I don't know. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the next steps, sort of in this field.
Yeah, I think it's going to be all of that, and obviously across customer segments, starting with like really kind of like the mainstream customers, but obviously also the underbanked group. We are looking into expanding into third world countries where we can really help the customers to improve their financial situation. And then, I mean, in terms of the approach that banks or like fintechs will be taking, we really expect to see much more kind of cross-disciplinary knowledge transfer. So because obviously, like right now, for example, at Dreams, we are working a lot with insights from psychology, neuroscience, behavioral economics. And I expect that also to merge with the kind of more data-driven side, AI, data science, etc. So I think what we will see is that the solutions become much more complex, much more sophisticated behind the scenes. And then on the other hand, I think when it comes to the interface, like that will be the opposite. It will become much more simple, much more sleek and sexy. I'm sure that anyone who has worked in product development is aware of like how complex it is to make something simple. So that's what we expect to see, to see really a solution in banking where it's actually fun to use the product.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that is, I think, a bit the key, right? I think in general, we've been talking about gamification, I think, already also for ages, but it never actually really hit the ground in the sense that just everyday activities need to be fun, right? And especially the things that you would now deem to be boring or cumbersome, but are important to you and can really help you. Yeah, somehow you need to make people feel how useful they are also on the short notice, basically. I'm also really interested in that.
Yeah, and this is something that we're also working with quite heavily. I mean, in the science world, it's called temptation bundling, where you kind of bundle something that is fun with something that is not as fun, but it's like necessary to do. We do it in our app, for example, by providing people the possibility to save when their favorite soccer team scores. So you have that kind of like you basically reprogram your emotional attitude towards saving is something that's fun, that's exciting, because like your brain basically mixes it up. And so that's, I think, like an example of ethical gamification. Obviously, as we have talked before, there are also negative examples of gamification that kind of like are almost going into the direction of gambling,
Exactly.
even when talking about
You can eat pie every time you save 100 euros. You might grow too fat at some point, but no, indeed. So I can imagine indeed that you could do it the wrong way. But it's and that's of course always it can be very powerful if you really understand people's motivation and behavior. You could also use that knowledge to drive them in the wrong direction. And I think that's where the ethical discussion remains very important to figure out. How should you help people? How far should you go? How much choice should people keep to have on their own? Quite tough, but very interesting, I think, especially if you look into the whole data economy and the decision support, I think that we can be giving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the ethical compass is everything. From my perspective, like the absolute minimum baseline is to not be evil. But I also think that that's not enough. Like you should actively try to be good. I think that's the benchmark that we should set for ourselves.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really nice one. And I see a lot of big drive in the industry to do that. But sometimes it is a struggle. Because you have to also maintain your own interests, and that's always a balance how to do that properly. But definitely something, and definitely also something I think we can talk about when we look at Amsterdam Fintech Week next year. So what do you think? What should be on the agenda next week, next year, when we hopefully are able to meet each other again? But what should be our conversation about?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to have more conversation around the topic of financial well-being. I think it will only become more important. I would also love to see conversations around the ethics of providing powerful solution. We would love to see more companies, more providers, more banks interested in the scientific aspects, behavioral science, cognitive science. And I'm like, then also kind of like the overall wrapper is, I think, customer engagement. How can you increase customer engagement in an ethical way? What's out there that's actually working and that's also providing value for the customer?
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and I think there's still a lot to be done there. It's also, I see a fierce competition between, for example, neobanks, traditional banks, and also other providers that are all trying to move into the space. And I think the customer engagement is definitely the one big significant differentiator for everyone. So really, really cool to see how that evolves. So I'm really looking forward to speak with you about that next year. In any case. And of course, in the meanwhile, we'll be continuing our conversation as Holland Fintech with Dreams to see how we can help you along the way. Thank you very much for your time. And I thought it was really nice to hear a bit more about Dreams and the field of behavioral science in the connection to financial well-being. Looking forward to take that talk to the next level next time, Lucia.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. We are looking forward to attend Amsterdam Fintech Week again next year, hopefully in person, hopefully with an in-person drink after the event. And then until then, let's stay in touch digitally.
Definitely. Let's do that. Thank you very much for joining me here. And thank you all for listening in.
Thank you.